How's it hanging, everyone? Manu here on the Fi Kid Zero channel once again. This is another interview that I did during NAC, this time with Kian Barry of CubingUSA. CubingUSA runs all of the major championships in the United States, including North American championships and the World's 2025, the World Championship. It's coming back to the United States for the first time in 12 years this year. This was a one that we did during lunch, and it was like a fun little spot. It was good to get to know like kind of how CubingUSA plans for major championships and what they're looking for in terms of like putting together a major championship bid. And we also talk a little bit about what Worlds 2025 is going to look like, and even some stuff like beyond that, like what cubing is going to look like in the future, coming off the heels of All Stars and stuff like that. Pretty fun interview. Thanks to Matt and Marinick for letting me upload this onto my channel. And yeah, here you go. Hope you enjoy. All right, hello everyone. We are currently at lunch on Championship Sunday here at Rubik's WCA North American Championships 2024. I'm joined with Chairman of CubingUSA, Kian Barry. It's an honor to have you on.
I don't know about that, but thanks for having me.
All right, so we're just going to do a short interview during lunchtime while all of you are enjoying lunch, and while we have a little bit of lull in the action so we can get a little bit deeper inside CubingUSA. First of all, Kian, tell me about how this weekend has been so far from your perspective, organization-wise.
Yeah, I mean, it's gone fairly smoothly. We've kept ourselves pretty much on time. Very few serious problems. I mean, I would say, all in all, I mean, we expect a smooth event because we've done it so many times, but very smooth, We have a extremely high show rate. I think it was like 7% of people didn't show up.
That's really good.
Fantastic. We're happy to run, as always, one of the largest competitions in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking on that a little bit, can you give a little bit more background about what CubingUSA does? I mean,
Sure.
A lot of people know that there's like a lot of major championships that go on, but a little bit more day-to-day would be useful too.
Sure. So CubingUSA has a few goals. I mean, one of them is certainly to run nationals or a similar event like North American Championships this year or Worlds next year. But also we run the regionals, of course, every year. And we also want to support local cubing competitions as well. So we utilize our 501c3 nonprofit status to help some organizations get better rates and really help them have like a backbone for the financial situation that might arise in a given competition. So our goals are to help expand cubing in the United States, improve it, not really from a competitive standpoint, but from a competition standpoint.
Or like a logistics standpoint,
Yeah,
perhaps.
exactly, from a logistics standpoint. But yeah, we're a small organization and a few board members, totally volunteer organization, and we have I think we've been incorporated now for like the last 8 or 9 years. But yeah, we're the official regional organization, of course, recognized by the WCA, and yeah, those are, I guess, some of our goals.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, the U.S. is like a huge region in terms of cubing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably the largest region. I think the second one is probably China. There's some sort of comparison. It's a little hard to know exactly.
Sure.
What is it like managing all this stuff for this entire region?
Yeah, so, I mean, we're not really actively managing all of the things, right? I mean, it's not like a deeply centralized administration where we're like, we're not running the local competitions, right? We have like a mechanism through which if you're interested in having a CubingUSA sponsor support a competition, you reach out to us. We have a deputy who approves it. We look at make sure the finances make sense and that we feel comfortable with the general setup, and then we support the competition. But that's mostly a financial and like institutional support. It's not day-to-day support. So CubingUSA's role is not to micromanage the cubing community. Our goal is to provide some high-level support, provide high-level tournaments, and that's really it. I mean, we're talking about, the people running it are also, we all have full-time jobs. Like,
yeah, of course.
We are not actively managing cubing every day. But yeah.
I mean, it would be impossible, actually, for like a small group of people to manage like, I don't even know. Do you know the exact number of how many competitions were in the States last year?
I have no idea.
Just something absurd, probably, right?
It is an absurd number.
Okay. One thing I do want to mention, we saw earlier today, we saw Tim do his 10,000th solve on stream. Yeah. We had a great reaction from you as well. We have a little replay that we'd like to play for that.
Yeah, sure.
You want to talk a little bit about Tim's?
Yeah, so we realized when Tim got to this competition, he knew that if he got every single solve without advancing, he would get exactly to 10,000. And for blindfolded, he got 2 out of 3 successes.
Okay.
So we knew that he needed to make a second round, and this is the 1 second round he made. And so last night I said, we have to put you on stream. This is more interesting than the 30th person to get a 2 second solve. Like I want to, and Tim deserves it. Tim is the lead organizer of CubingUSA Nationals, or now the Rubik's WC North American Championship. He's the lead organizer of next year's World Championship. And I want to celebrate some people as well who have contributed an enormous amount to cubing, especially in the United States, but really around the world. And it's kind of a fun little moment.
Especially since a lot of the stuff that Tim and CubingUSA in general do is really a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff. Most of the time, you're not really interacting with like the organizers or members of CubingUSA anyway, so it's good to see a little recognition.
Yeah, I don't really expect or need people to know who I am or who other people are. We just want to do a good job. I mean, I'm not... a lot of us are less involved in like local competitions than we used to be, and we're trying to provide high-level support. And so, yeah, I mean, this was just like a fun little thing, and we wanted to celebrate, in quotes, Tim's 10,000 solve.
Hey, I mean, Tim got a good solve, too.
Yeah, it was his best solve of the round,
He had layer into CLL, right? And soon CLL, not too tricky.
Yeah, Unfortunately, I don't think he saw it ahead of time, but yeah, it worked.
We'll just say he did. He knew it. He knew it the whole way. In inspection, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the regional championships? Because, a lot of people know, like, the majors, like, Worlds, Nats, the Continental Championships, but the regionals ones are a little bit, I think a decent amount of people know about them, but it'd be good to get a little bit more on it.
Yeah, it's an opportunity for people who maybe can't make it to nationals, or simply another opportunity to do a lot of events. So I think we have 9 regions. I could be off by 1 or
9 or 11 regions.
Yeah, something like that. And trying to host a regionals once a year so that everyone has access to a large competition where we host every event is really important to us. We want to open up access in general to cubing. It's why last year we had our first competitions in Puerto Rico, and like really trying to expand. I mean, fortunately, we've been in every state now, and that's really important to us. That nationals or North American Championships or Worlds, whatever it may be in a given year, is not an event that is like exclusive to people who have the financial means to fly to Minneapolis or Seattle. If you live in Arkansas or Ohio or whatever, that's not necessarily accessible, but you might be able to go to New England Championships, the Great Lakes Championships, the Heartland Championships. And they're huge, a lot of these. Some of them, I think New England in a couple weeks is a competitor limit of 400. Like, these are, in many other places, would be the size of a national championship or bigger. So we're happy to support that. I think that was a really good measure we took a couple of years ago. And it's been really successful.
Yeah, as a delegate out west who is also involved in the organization of Western Championships, that's going to happen in 2 weeks' time. I know there's loads of competitors in the West who were not able to make it out to Minnesota. They're like, well, at least I have this to look forward to because, we're going to provide a live stream for that. We're going to have head-to-head finals. It is going to be quite a bit of a showcase there. And I think it's a great opportunity for the local community to kind of be able to showcase themselves, even if it isn't necessarily at, like, this grand stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it certainly is a lot easier than trying to organize something like massive like this. Can you tell me a little bit about like what that organization process looks like at a high level, just to give the viewers some idea?
Sure. So, I mean, the process really starts for us, whether it be nationals or whatever, about 2 years out. We file RFPs, requests for proposals, from convention centers. I mean, now we're in convention centers. Used to be hotels. The expansion of cubing has made it such that that's not an option anymore. But like we've already attempted to reach out to some places for 2026.
Okay.
So it begins with that process, and then we kind of evaluate, okay, which ones are financially within our budget, something that might be reasonable. We've already eliminated cities that we feel like are too inaccessible to make it reasonable for people to fly into. I mean, it should be within an hour or so of like a major airport or a major city. And we have, to some extent, we like the idea of moving it around the country. It is not a firm rule. Like, if we don't have another option, obviously, we will be where we have to be. But, yeah, and then once we really get through that, we sign contracts, then, I mean, we have meetings every 2 weeks for about a year. We have every meetings about just for North American Championships, for example. We had meetings for every 2 weeks for the last year. And in between, we're delegating tasks. Tim is generally in charge of scheduling and the staff assignments that are so complex.
Extreme.
He's
Oh
fortunately, I think he's automated some of it or some amount of it. Different people will be working with a venue. I tend to work with sponsors, but you kind of break it up in a given year. Hopefully we gain a new person that's like local every year. Generally, we would like to do that. That's at least reasonably local that can contribute something like that. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of making calls and asking the price of stanchions, or there's a tedium to it as well.
Yeah, of course. One thing you mentioned is sponsors. I'm not sure if there's something you want to expand a little bit more about. It is known that there are more sponsors in cubing now than there have been before, and some companies are even getting in outside of cubing. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're very happy that we have our sponsors this tournament, Rubik's, the WCA, and the Cubicle, who have continued to support cubing, and certainly we hope to have good sponsors for next year's event. Obviously we have the WCA. Hopefully we have other sponsors as well for next year, which we certainly expect to. The idea of going outside of cubing is a really interesting endeavor. We have been unsuccessful in really being able to connect in a meaningful way with someone else. I mean, I've sent emails into a void, but the unsolicited emails from people asking for money tend not to go super well. There are, if an opportunity presents itself, I mean, we are actively seeking out opportunities like that. And I think it's then certainly an important next step for cubing if we want to make the events more, the pageantry to be a little bit more elegant, or to have a swag bag that is more than $5 worth of trinkets or something. And while it's nice, we're running on the money that we have, and a sponsorship would like that could really change the competitor experience, which we've tried to emphasize a lot more in the last couple of years. But I realize I think it's probably the places in which we can grow the most, because I think the competition, we're pretty comfortable with it kind of going smoothly every year now.
Yeah, I mean, something interesting that so I talked to Ethan Pride earlier on the stream as well, and he was really excited to come to a North American competition, because especially a major, because he was like, yeah, this is like one of the standards for competitions around the world, and he's like, yeah, this is definitely like met what I was expecting, and definitely is like the standard we want to look at going forward. So that's just a testament to all the great work that CubingUSA has done putting this on. Yeah,
that's mostly Tim Reynolds, to be fair. I think Keaton asked me last year on stream, like, what do you need to run a national championship? And I said, you need a Tim Reynolds. And I truly don't know what would happen if he decided not to be the lead organizer. It would be a pretty nightmarish situation. You need some people willing to really put in a great deal of work for
basically nothing.
For nothing other than they feel like it's an important thing for the cubing community.
Yeah, definitely. Tim is definitely really huge. Also, Tim is like at least somewhat involved with local competitions still. At least I see his name on delegate reports.
He runs, I think he's the entity chairman or president or whatever of Cube New England, and he's very, very involved there. And yeah, he's still involved. I mean, good to him. I mean, he's getting married this year, so I don't know, maybe that slows down in October. But yeah, I can't imagine doing that anymore.
Yeah, no, of course. Okay, let's talk a little bit about going into next year, because that's the big deal. We're going to have Worlds back in the United States after 12 years.
Yeah.
How did CubingUSA kind of feel putting that bid in? And then tell me a little bit about what your Worlds expectations are.
So, So we put in a bid for 2023 as well. We felt that it was time, and we were ready to be able to host a major championship again. We, and a number of us are still here, remarkably, from the 2013 World Championship, which was, I feel like, the best run competition we've ever had. It was spectacular. We were never behind. It was smooth. It was fantastic memories of that event in 2013. And, we want to contribute. We think that we run a really good competition, and we don't think that there's an entity that will do a better job than us. And so we submitted for 2023. We were disappointed to not get the bid in Chicago, so we had a meeting with the board about like what they wanted, and then we talked to them later on as well when the next bid was coming, and we felt really good about the Seattle bid. And if we didn't have a good location, we would not have bid for Worlds, but we wanted to host this. We think that we can put on a really good show, and there are some things that we think are needed in the World Championship, which is expansion of access. We think that it's the fact that, for example, last time it fills up in a day or an hour.
Yeah.
We don't want that. So we're instituting a different registration system as well. Where we're doing something that I think that they've been using in Poland for quite some time, this phase registration system. And the goal is to make sure that we're not excluding people simply, A, because they weren't on the website within an hour, and B, like, it's a world championship. We think it's important that we have people who can win the world championship. But it is going to be done in phases. It's it was really, we thought about all this before that was part of our proposal, was the phase championship. So yeah, there were certain things that we thought we could bring to it, and now we're tasked with it. As soon as this competition pretty much ends, it's
time to start planning for Worlds.
I mean, we've already been planning for Worlds. We've been having meetings once a month about Worlds for the last year, but we're going to ramp it up, obviously. We're excited. It's July. I think it's July 4th weekend. Yeah,
which is going to be really, really exciting. Yeah. And I know that there's already conversations about like trying to get like other things involved as well, like I'm not going to leak it anyway.
Okay.
There are other exciting things in the works as well, it seems. One thing I did want to ask you're actually the perfect interviewee, because I was going to talk about the qualification system next. What kind of feedback have you all received about the qualification system?
So I think people are not super aware of it yet, to be honest.
Okay, yeah, this is a good place to explain it.
So basically the way it's going to work is there are 4 phases listed on the website. So if you qualify for anything in phase 1, you can register during the first phase. So we'll have, I think we're going to do something like, I'm not certain that the time is exactly, but say 2 weeks on for the first phase, you register. And if you're registered for anything, you register for that one event, but that doesn't end there. And then we'll open up phase 2 we'll take a week off, then we'll open up phase 2, and then if you're registrable, you meet a qualification standard for any of those, you'll go into that. Same, so on and so forth for 3 and 4. However, once competition registration closes, we fully expect we will fill up, even at 2,000 competitors. Once that closes, then if you are in, you can register for anything through which you are qualified through phase 4.
Right.
So it's a little bit complicated to explain in words, but essentially look at your phases. If you want to try and qualify for a particular phase, find a couple events that is a reasonable option for you. There is this balance between access for everyone and access for top competitors, and we want to try and provide both of them, which is why also there's 2,000 competitors.
Yeah.
I would be absolutely floored if we were not getting to phase 2, and I think we'll probably go beyond that as well.
Oh, yeah, I think it's very, very unlikely.
It's basically impossible for us to fill in phase 1.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm sure you all did the numbers on this as well. So, and yeah, that based on like projections that other people have run as well, that also seems to be the case.
I think we'll be in 3 or 4 for sure.
Yeah, so there are 2 threads. One of the threads I want to pull on here is, I think it's really interesting actually doing this, because now like there are like clear marks. It's like it sets a goal for everyone.
Yep.
Like, because I'm a phase 2 competitor, and I'm like, okay, well, I think I can probably get in, but if I really want to get a good chance of making it into Worlds, because everyone and their mother wants to go to Worlds, right?
Sure.
So if I really want to guarantee that I have a chance, okay, well, here's a couple of things that I need to try and qualify for, and now I have a clear-cut goal. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for this. I think something that's also going to be really interesting is, based on that, I'm sure we're going to see some competitors who aren't just going to make that qualification, but then really push and try and like become competitive. So I think we're going to see a really, really exciting world.
Yeah, we wanted to make it like extremely transparent as early as possible. So I mean, those times are already on the website.
Yeah.
You can see right now what it's going to be. You have time.
Yeah, exactly.
Prepare. I'm not going to be moving up from phase 3 to phase 2. That's not going to happen. But some people can be doing that. Yeah.
Okay, for sure. The other thing which I think is really nice is a lot of local competitions now have a little bit more of stakes. Now instead of like just going in trying to break your PR, now it's like, okay, well, I'm shooting for a time now. And I think that's going to be really interesting, especially in regions like the West where we have so many competitions. We're going to see a lot of people, I think, doing a lot of the events are going to be varied more. We're going to see a lot more better distribution across all the events. And I think that's going to be really fun. And I think it'll be a good opportunity for people, A, to qualify, and B, just to try new stuff out.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really excited for that. One thing I also want to ask about is this kind of accessibility versus competitiveness aspect, not just for Worlds, but kind of in the future. Where do you think that is going to go for cubing?
It's a really open and interesting question. I mean, we have the means to have a lot of competitors. I mean, and for like a nationals, I think we can be reasonably non-restrictive about events. Worlds is a little bit different. We're a little uncertain about that. So your question of like, what does that look like? I don't know what the future looks like for that. I don't know exactly where the WCA board wants those things to go.
Sure.
I don't know if there will be policy that will dictate that. Yeah, it's a very interesting thing. Like, to what extent is this a convention of and meeting of cubers versus a competition of the best cubers in the world? And it is some amalgam of both, and what you do with it is, well, kind of a choice, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I don't really see us as the policymakers for that. I think it's probably the WCA's call. But while we're in charge of Worlds, and we are not going to be doing Worlds for a while after that, I mean, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I think it's certainly very interesting. We saw an interesting format competition happen earlier this week as well with All-Stars.
Yeah.
Kind of want to get your thoughts on that. I don't know how much CubingUSA was involved in that, and, you know, what kind of involvement does CubingUSA want to have with events like that in the future?
Yeah, so we were reached out to by some local organizers, and they had this idea to do this, like, All-Star event. I think we coordinated a bit with, like, you know, the streaming and some of the other. It might have been a CubingUSA supported competition. I'm not positive, actually. But we had some relationship with it. We worked through it. We thought this was a good idea. It's different, right? You have a great deal of solves for a very select number of people. It is, like, you know, essentially like an invitational almost. I mean, without technically being that. It's interesting because it's like curbing the general trend of just larger and larger competitions. And maybe there's a bifurcation at some point between those kind of like elite events and then more like open events for everybody. Maybe this is a reasonable mechanism to do that. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables.
Maybe there's qualifiers at some point in the future. You know, maybe we have like a different way of getting in. I don't know what it's going to look like.
Yeah, it'll definitely be very interesting to see how that ends up in the future. So one more thing I'm going to mention before we do a little wrap-up.
Sure.
One thing that's unique to this NAC is the production quality. The production quality is through the roof, and I'm kind of curious what that looks like on the CubingUSA side, and like how you think the productions and things like that are going to look for Worlds, but I'm really thinking more like in the future if like this kind of level of production is going to be necessary.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really enormously dependent on like sponsorship money.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
So like, you know, the sponsors behind you are the reason why we're able to pay for certain things. You know, our income is generated through revenue from, you know, registration fees, and there's only so much we want to charge. You know, I know that the fee is significant at the moment. It's what it takes to run a competition at a convention center, and not even, it's not enough. I mean, we need to seek out sponsors to make it happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, it looks like we're trending in a good way towards greater and greater sponsorship deals and maybe access to more non-cube sponsors as well.
Yeah.
Which will provide more production value. I think we're gonna maybe kind of outsource some of the decoration and things like that next year in a way that is a little bit more professional. Because Tim and I should not be decorating anything. So it feels like, you know, we can, you know, loosen up and let other people play a role. Once we have the money to do so, that sounds great. I think that's the future that we have to think about, because I was talking to Carrie, who's on the board, WCA board, just before, and I was mentioning to her, like, the idea of running the competition is not remotely stressful to us at all. Like, we feel very comfortable in, we'll plan it out, we'll figure out the schedule, and it'll be done, and it'll be on time.
That's impressive.
Everything else is what we're like,
the bells and whistles, perhaps.
We've just done it so many times. I mean, we've never done 2000, but it's a pretty modular thing. I don't really...
Like, it scales reasonably.
Yeah, I think, and we will know beforehand, once we know how many are in each event.
That's true.
We'll pretty much know how long it'll take.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
We have a great staff where we really have, we get good delegates and people who are recommended by delegates, and we can, people show up for their assignments, you know, and we stay on top of things.
Yeah.
So that's the least of our worries.
All very, very exciting.
Yeah.
So it's great to hear from you, Kian.
Yeah.
I think we do have to wrap up, but it's wonderful hearing about Worlds next year, and I'm excited to see the rest of this competition and Worlds next year.
Thanks for having me. I'll see you next year.
All right, thanks, everyone. We're going to have one more interview, so stay tight.